Start.
So I'm Dr. Donna Kasello. I'm a board certified gynecologist with Premier, and I've been in practice for just over 24 years, been in the Hudson Valley the entire time, and also recently just completed my fellowship in integrative medicine, which is basically lifestyle medicine, incorporating like holistic approaches to healthcare. And so Theresa, you can introduce yourself.
Good evening, everybody. I want to thank everybody for coming. My name is Theresa McArtin. I'm a registered dietitian. I've been a registered dietitian for about 10 years. Past 5 years, I was in private practice, and particularly with GI, the GI segment. And I also specialize in weight loss. I specialize in diabetes management, as well as eating disorders, anorexia, bulimia, binge eating disorders. And I hope everybody enjoys tonight's segment on is menopause weighing on you. I hope everybody enjoys it. And I'll let Dr. Kasello take it from there.
So this kind of came up because one of the most common things, I wanted to do something that was a joint thing because I do a lot of counseling with nutrition. But one of the most common things that I think that women ask me in well woman visits that I see is about weight gain. And, you know, most of the time the weight gain is usually right around that perimenopausal, menopausal time. So, so I just thought it was like a really good opportunity to kind of maybe try to explain like some reasons as to why this happens, and also, you know, with the use of, you know, through diet and nutrition. And that's why, you know, we have, you know, Theresa to talk about what we can do to really combat what's going on. So basically, on average, I'd say women gain about like 1 to 2 pounds a year in that menopausal period. You know, up to 90% of women gain weight. So ladies, you're not alone. This is very common. A lot of us go through it. But the other issue too is, you know, when women are gaining weight, the issue with obesity is becoming more and more prevalent. We're starting to see that, you know, people in teenage years and 20s, you know, are already gaining weight. And as you enter those menopausal years or perimenopausal years, you're going to even pack on the pounds even more. So it's becoming more and more of an issue. And, you know, again, it usually starts around like that age 35, 40. So as far as just to go over, you know, a couple of things, I just want to define like what menopause really is. So menopause is the absence of menstruation. It is for 1 year. Obviously, it's not applicable if you had a hysterectomy or if you're on hormones that will, you know, prevent you from having a period, or if you had a procedure like an endometrial ablation. So, you know, you can't really use that definition. I mean, in those cases, you might, you know, have a blood test that defines it. But it basically occurs around age 51. So it's a bell-shaped curve. So some women will go through menopause a little bit earlier. Some will go later. I have some patients who, you know, maybe even at like 56 years old are still having cycles. But can occur as early as age 40. So then what is perimenopause? So the perimenopause is really the transition that goes on leading up to menopause. This is what drives a lot of women crazy because their hormones are bouncing all over the place. So this can be anywhere from 6 months to several years, sometimes even 6, 7 years. And every menopausal transition that a woman goes through is their own journey. I mean, it's very different for each woman. There's an erratic fluctuation of hormones, especially your estrogen. And oftentimes there's lower levels of progesterone. And that happens because a lot of times we stop ovulating, or we don't have what we call anovulatory cycles. And the progesterone oftentimes is needed to balance the estrogen. So it's the imbalance of that sometimes causes some issues with women. And also testosterone levels start to drop. So women do need testosterone. We do peak our testosterone somewhere in our 20s, and it starts to dwindle off in the 30s, and in the 40s it starts to decrease a little bit further. So this is just a picture of the hormonal life cycle, basically. So this is what happens with your estrogen. You have the most amount of estrogen in your reproductive years. And then once you hit around 35, ovulation starts to change a little bit. You might notice some changes with your cycle. There's sometimes they're heavier, sometimes they're a little bit more irregular, sometimes you might skip here and there. And so you'll become oftentimes symptomatic during that period of time. And then right around like beginning in the 50s, you'll start to go through actual menopause. So this is just another depiction of kind of, what happens. Our estrogen levels, kind of increase. Around age 35 is when we reach the peak, and then they start to decline again. So symptoms, so I would assume that if you're on this webinar, you probably are perimenopausal or menopausal. So you probably know some of these symptoms. Hot flashes and night sweats are the most common. There's some sexual changes that a lot of women will complain about with libido issues and sometimes vaginal dryness. So that could be a whole nother topic in and of itself. If anybody wants to do a webinar on that, that might be the next one. Sleep disturbances, very common. Urinary changes such as frequency, urgency, incontinence. Mood changes, a lot of women will complain of feeling very, like a lot of, like PMS type symptoms, crying for no reason at all. And then, of course, weight gain, which is why we're here tonight. So there's some theories as to what happens with, as far as estrogen's impact on our weight. And, our bodies try to stay in balance. And so it wants to have estrogen. And estrogen is also made in our fat cells. And it's not the same kind of estrogen that's made in the ovary. But it's still a type of estrogen. So there's some theories that as our estrogen starts to decline, our body wants to hold on because we want to stay young. So our body wants to hold on to the estrogen. So we might be trying to make more estrogen through the fat cells, and that actually we have an increase in fat cell mass as the estrogen declines. And then there's also some other theories that estrogen has an impact on some of the hormones that affect our appetite. And as estrogen and progesterone decrease, that it might have an impact on hormones such as leptin and ghrelin. These are hormones that have a lot to do with our satiety, which is that feeling satisfied with, with food, and that we don't really have any, need to eat at the time. Leptin is made by fat cells. And that's also related to ghrelin. As leptin levels decrease, we don't have the satiety, and therefore the ghrelin gets increased, and then we have more hunger. So that's another thing that estrogen and progesterone, may have an impact on with our appetite. So the question oftentimes is, is weight gain really due to my hormones? So yes, but in my opinion, it's not just your estrogen. And also no, because I think there's a lot of other factors at play that lead up to the reason why we gain weight at this particular point of time in life. So our hormones, they decrease by age. And so we talked about the estrogen dropping, and, you can see here, as our estrogen declines, this is like around age 40, we have this kind of erratic, crazy, drop in estrogen, but it's also kind of up and down. We see here that the progesterone level also starts to drop. And then that's why we have a lot of this estrogen dominance, I call it. Estrogen dominance is usually associated with, these, the mood changes. Sometimes you'll have, maybe some like increased breast density, breast cysts, fibroids, exacerbation of endometriosis. So these are some things that, we see also during the perimenopausal period. The testosterone level starts to drop. And then also there's a change in the ratio of estrogen to progesterone. And that has a lot to do sometimes with the the way fat is kind of deposited in our bodies. And I'll go over that a little bit more and a little later, a couple slides down. And then I thought it was also interesting that our melatonin drops, because we're always complaining about our sleep. Melatonin is our sleep hormone, and that is, as that drops, and that oftentimes is associated with some of our sleep disruption that we have. That's why we wake up in the middle of the night, always ruminating over something. So this is kind of a busy slide. It has a lot on it. These are the hormonal links to weight gain. So I think we all pretty much are familiar with thyroid. Thyroid deficiency is, or hypothyroidism is quite common in women. So thyroid has a lot to do with our metabolism. And, you know, so if we have low thyroid, then it can affect our metabolism and slow our metabolism down and cause weight gain. So that's one, and that's another hormone. We talked about a little bit of the estrogen. We talked a little bit about the androgen imbalance, which is our testosterone. That, you know, as that decreases, we have a decrease in our lean muscle mass, and then also has an impact on fat distribution. Vitamin D deficiency was in here, but it may be associated with how our fat is distributed. But vitamin D deficiency is kind of like a hot topic right now. It's associated with a lot of chronic disease, and it doesn't mean that the low vitamin D necessarily causes chronic disease, but a lot of chronic disease states, there's vitamin D deficiency. So it may play some kind of a role. But to me, one of the key places that I like to focus on that I think really drives most of the weight gain really is insulin resistance. And insulin resistance is not diabetes. It is something that happens where our bodies actually are not really responding to the insulin. And then, so we need to make more insulin. And insulin helps to regulate our glucose. And so if you have too much insulin all the time, insulin tends to be very pro-inflammatory. And then when you have a lot of inflammation or systemic inflammation, these are things that cause other hormonal disruptions. And on top of it, has a lot to do with, you know, with weight gain and other chronic diseases too. So, but some of the things that are associated with insulin resistance is sedentary lifestyle, obesity in and of itself, our poor diet. I mean, a lot of us do follow something called the standard American diet, which is now known as the SAD diet. Also poor sleep and smoking. So these are the hormones that really are associated with weight. Insulin we talked about. Cortisol also has a lot to do. And you know, a lot of us are highly stressed. We're, you know, always going. We're always in this sympathetic overload type of lifestyle. And our cortisol levels are high a lot of times. And cortisol, as we all know, is a steroid hormone, but I'm sure we will know the association of somebody who maybe is on prednisone for long term. They oftentimes gain weight. So it's the same thing that happens with cortisol. So if you have too much cortisol around, then it causes an inflammatory response, and you have inflammation, then it causes, you know, more weight gain, and also is associated with putting the weight in the wrong places, which is, you know, most of that belly fat that a lot of us complain about. Our thyroid, we talked about a little bit, and but also, you know, estrogen, ghrelin, leptin, testosterone, peptide YY, which is a gut hormone, as well as neuropeptide Y and growth hormone. I just put these up here not because I want to really talk about all of them, but I just want to kind of get you to understand the complexity of really what's happening when with weight gain, that it's really not just all about your estrogen. There's many other factors at play. So causes of weight gain. So as we age, there's a decrease in overall metabolic rate. That's just the way it is. I mean, it's something that we can't help. We're no longer in a state of building. I don't really want to say we're in a state of decline, but our metabolic rate goes down. And therefore, you know, it's kind of simple math. If you have a lower metabolic rate, then you need less calories. And on average, we typically need about 200 less calories a day. So a lot of times somebody will say, you know, I'm doing the same thing. I'm eating the same foods and I don't really know, like, why am I gaining weight? Well, the thing is that you do have to make an adjustment as you get older, that, you know, you do have to decrease the amount of calories. Also, there's a decrease in lean muscle mass. This is something called sarcopenia, and it happens, I think, really is an issue with women, in my opinion. I mean, muscle, obviously men, you know, they maintain their muscle mass predominantly because their testosterone stays a little bit higher. You know, we lose our growth hormone, we lose our estrogen, we lose our testosterone, and these are all things that actually help to, you know, affect our muscle mass. So as those decline, so does our muscle mass. And, you know, to me, muscle is really a metabolic driver. You know, fat doesn't need any calories, whereas muscle, a toned muscle at rest, needs calories. Increase in insulin resistance. You know, to me, I think this is a key factor. Which probably is a whole nother topic that we can talk about. Less exercise. I think we just, as we get older, we just move less. We don't push ourselves as much as we did when we were younger. So here again, I mean, that even further impacts the muscle mass, and then, you know, probably drives down that metabolic rate as well. Inadequate sleep. As we get older, we definitely don't, our quality of sleep oftentimes goes down. As women, I think we have this problem because we ruminate over things way too much. More stress, more stress, more cortisol, more cortisol, more inflammation, more weight gain. And then, of course, hypothyroidism. So a lot of these hormones do, you know, as far as how the fat is distributed, it does matter. When you're younger and you have your estrogen that's, you know, starting to surge, we tend to deposit our fat more in our hips and subcutaneous tissue. And, you know, we have this pear shape that we always, you know, equate it to. And that's associated with a lot less health risk. But as we get older and we have some of these hormonal changes, we tend to develop, put our fat more into what's called visceral fat, or, you know, the belly fat that everybody complains about. And that's the fat that really surrounds internal organs, such as like your liver and your pancreas. And this is a hormonal fat. I mean, this is a very pro-inflammatory type of fat, and it's associated with increased health risks. So there's an increase in type 2 diabetes. There's an increase in hypertension and cardiovascular disease and certain types of cancers as well. So where you put the fat actually does matter. So the estrogen, as I said, is something that stimulates more of the that peripheral fat. And then so as our estrogen declines, so we don't, that's why one of the reasons why we don't put the fat into you know, more into the hips, and it goes more into the belly. There's also some role with testosterone, because as I said, the estrogen to the testosterone ratio changes, where our body's actually kind of, it's as though we have more testosterone, even though it's dropping, and the ratio is a little bit different. And that is more of a promoter to the visceral fat. But again, you know, as I said, the insulin, the cortisol, the thyroid hormone, and the growth hormone, they all impact our weight and fat deposition. So what's a woman to do? I like to counsel patients on, you know, trying to keep it simple. And I call this the 4 pillars of health. And, you know, our mindset is really important. I mean, the impact of mindfulness and, you know, and just having joy and spirituality and our emotional well-being really does have an impact on our health. And we need to adopt more positive type mindsets. Our sleep is really important, and we really need to try to understand sleep hygiene much better, because that's where we restore. And also it's where we help to kind of decrease some of this systemic inflammation that a lot of us have, and the importance of exercise. I think that, you know, weight-bearing exercise or like a high intensity interval type training. I don't think, doing, going out and running a marathon or anything is really the answer, but it needs to be something that you enjoy. But I truly think that one of the biggest issues is proper nutrition. And I think that, diet really is really the key. And that's why we had Theresa here, so that she can really go over some of the issues of nutrition and maybe come up with some good pointers as to what we can do to combat our weight gain in menopause. So Theresa.
Thank you, Dr. Kasello. That was great, great information, and hopefully we can lead into now the nutrition part. So give me one sec, everybody. I'm just gonna share my screen with you. And that way you can see my slides. So hold on one quick second. Okay. All right, everybody. Thank you again for coming out tonight. Just to remind everybody, there is a chat section at the bottom of the screen. So if you have any questions on Dr. Kasello's portion or my portion, we'll be answering them at the end of this presentation. So again, we're going to be talking about weight during menopause, and tonight I'm going to be talking about the nutrition part. I want to backtrack 1 second to what Dr. Kasello just mentioned about our mind and having that positive mindset does impact our weight, and that's 100% true. And I feel like, especially in today's day and age, we really, to stress that is of the utmost importance, because it's 100% true. Increased cortisol levels will contribute to weight gain. So sometimes, practicing anything that can help de-stress ourselves and avoiding toxic relationships and things like that can help. So 100%, I agree with Dr. Kasello. I just wanted to touch on that because I know I don't talk about that part much in my slides. It's more about the food and exercise, but I did want to touch on the importance of it. So I always say, us as women, we have, a complex life, right? So we go through, we start with, menstruating when we're younger and dealing with that on a monthly basis. And then we have kids and we deal with our pregnancy for 9 months, and it's wonderful and it's great and we all love it. I have 3 kids, so I love it, But then what happens is we go through perimenopause, and what happens at that point, and we see right here, if the arrow starts around, around in our 40s, we start to see this weight gain. And we go, well, I just, we started with menstruation, then we had kids, and I'm raising my kids, and now I have to deal with this weight gain. And I have patients that have never had to gain an ounce, never gained anything, never had to follow a diet, and come in and go, I gained 5 pounds this past year, and I don't know what happened. Everything I did is exactly the same as it was. How I exercise is the same, my diet's exactly the same, and I don't know what to do. I'm at a loss, and I'm afraid this weight's going to keep on going, right? And this is all starting to occur during this perimenopause time for a lot of different factors that Dr. Kasello just mentioned. And we're gonna briefly kind of breeze through them again, and then talk about how the diet does impact this and what we can do with our nutrition to help us prevent this weight gain, and preventing the weight gain, hopefully prevent these metabolic diseases like hypertension, like diabetes, like cardiovascular disease that can potentially come with this weight gain. So what are our objectives tonight? Well, I can tell you this little graphic over here. Big objective here is we want to know how to stop this weight gain, right? And if we can also figure out how to, help ourselves with the mood swings, the hot flashes, and sleep problems and night sweats, I think it would be a very good night and very informative for everybody. But our basic objectives for my presentation is, how does nutrition change during menopause? So as we're going through life, once we reach in our, in our 40s, what do we have to do that's so different? And nutrition is kind of like the building block for everything in my mind. Nutrition really does impact us wholly. It impacts us how our moods are, and impacts us how we're potentially gonna sleep. So there are a lot of things that we need to talk about. And then what changes do I have to make for my diet? Do I have to make any changes? Do I keep what I'm eating in my diet now, or do I need to change it completely? And then how do we stop this weight gain that keeps occurring? 1 pound, 2 pounds, 3 pounds every year. You know, we don't want to wind up that it's almost 30 pounds in 3 or 4 years, because we see the weight going from 1 to 2 pounds, and then maybe we get frustrated, and then we lose a lot of track of ourselves, and then all of a sudden the weight goes even higher. So we don't want to see that, right? So what is perimenopause? And Dr. Kasello did a great job explaining this. Again, I'll just breeze through it. It's a precursor to menopause. It could last years before your period ceases for good, right? So we go to perimenopause and then menopause. And the length of time that we spend in perimenopause is different for everybody. And I always say it's different for everybody because nobody fits in a box, right? We all are independent person. So just like perimenopause is different from one person to the other and what they experience, what you're going to eat and how your diet is will also different from person to person. In my line of work, I always say that a diet is never, I never go out and just give you the same sheet of paper that I gave the last person. It's very individualized because everybody's experiences and what you're doing in your day-to-day life is very different from person to person. So we have to take all of that into consideration. So let's talk with the fact, and I like this fact. It says one of the most irksome challenges facing women in midlife is unwanted weight gain. And I would probably bet if you're on this webinar tonight, we probably could agree with this. Who here wants to have all this unwanted weight gain, right? So according to a 2003-2004 National Health and Nutrition Examination Survey data, the largest jump in the percentage of women who became overweight or obese occurs between the ages of 20 and 39, which is about 52%, 51.7, and 40 and 59. So now here we go. We're getting into that menopausal years, right? And it's 68.1%, almost 70%. Big numbers here. So if you're on this webinar, you are not alone. You are not facing this alone. There's a lot of women dealing with this as well. So why is this occurring? Again, Dr. Kasello did a fantastic job explaining this. We'll just breeze through it again. Hormonal changes are responsible for increase in body fat, especially around our midsection. So I have a lot of patients that come into me and they tell me that they're starting to gain this weight during this perimenopausal time. And they're saying, it's right here. It's right in my stomach area. It's right in my gut. And they're pointing to it. And I'm like, yeah. Well, we know what's going on. We just talked about it, right? Estrogen begins to decline during perimenopause and continues to decline further with progesterone when menstruation ends. Research has shown that while changes in fat distribution can be attributed to hormonal shifts experienced by women in midlife, overall weight gain that occurs with age, about 1 to 2 pounds per year. So we're back to that about 1 to 2 pounds per year, primarily is due to the effects of aging, right? Such as, we just talked about it, decrease in activity. As we get older, we tend to move less. And a loss of lean body mass, which is more metabolically active. So it burns more of this, these calories that we're taking. So we're not moving as much. We're not burning as many calories. So what's going to happen, right? So we have all these hormonal changes occurring at an increased rate at which, and then what happens is all these hormonal changes are occurring. We're storing visceral fat in the vital organs, right? We said that's around the liver, we're storing all this fat. And further research has revealed that changes at the cellular level cause menopausal women to store more fat with the diminished ability to burn it. So again, we're not burning it, right? So what happens? Decreased exercise, decrease in energy expenditure, result, weight gain, right? We end up with this 1 to 2 pounds or potentially more weight gain per year. And the basis of it all, when we think about calories, is yes, we do need about 200 less calories a day. Now, 200 calories. Now, if you think 200 calories, it doesn't sound like a lot. You're like, I can do that. Well, that's almost 2 tablespoons of peanut butter. 2 tablespoons of peanut butter is 188 calories. So maybe we can get rid of the peanut butter. Maybe we could help ourselves. Or if you think I have the healthiest diet in the world, what could I take out? I think this is perfect. Well, Some yogurts are 100 to 150 calories or a little bit more, depending on what kind it is. So there are ways to take these 200 calories out, but we need to decrease it by at least 200 calories, depending upon, what your day-to-day intake is. So when we're thinking about all this, we're hearing all these things and we're going, all hope is lost. There is no way for me to come back from this weight gain. It's not lost. We are going to get you there. We are going to help you. I do have to say that I have many women come through my office over the years, perimenopausal, menopausal, and postmenopausal, and they've come in and they've been at a loss, not sure what to do. And we talked about weight loss and what we can do and getting them on the right diet plan, and it has worked. If you put the work in, if you have the right mindset, if you're trying to follow all the right things and you put the exercise in and you make the proper diet and lifestyle changes, it can definitely happen. So what's the secret? Do I have a secret here that I'm going to tell you tonight? Well, I don't know if it's such a secret, but I think we're going to have some good talk here tonight that hopefully will lead to a lot of discussion at the end. So strategies to decrease weight and chronic disease risk is key to helping anticipate physiological and metabolic changes, right? So we need to talk about these different strategies. What can we do to prevent all of this from happening and prevent this weight gain, and then from the weight gain, potential other disease states that could occur? What can we do? So the key to success, choosing a healthful diet that has lean sources of protein, healthy fats, low-fat dairy or dairy alternatives, and plenty of fruits and vegetables. So now you're probably sitting there going, oh, she's telling us something we already know. But let's dive a little bit further and let's talk about it a little bit more, okay? So I love this slide that Dr. Kasello had. It's the 4 pillars of wellness, and it's so true, right? So nutrition is here. So this is what we're talking about now. But again, we need to have this mindset, right? We have to have a positive mindset, because if we don't, our cortisol levels can increase, and then in turn, the weight will come on. As well as we want to make sure we're getting enough sleep, right? Getting enough sleep will then, if we don't get enough sleep, again, increase cortisol, weight will come on again. Now, when we're talking about all this, right, we're going to say, well, if I can't sleep at night, well, I can't really help my cortisol levels. Well, maybe sometimes when you start to exercise a little bit more and then you're eating properly, it can help your sleep patterns as well. So that's one way to look at it. And doesn't, maybe not for 100% of the people, but for some people, it could help them. So one of the facts, in a large study done in Australia, researchers found that women who ate diets high in fruits and vegetables and whole grains were 20% less likely to have hot flashes and night sweats, right? So if you're having a diet that's high in fruit, high in vegetables, and high in whole grains, 20% less likely to have hot flashes and night sweats. I think that's, if you're going through the changes and you're experiencing hot flashes and night sweats, I'm pretty sure if you just had to change your diet, we'd probably want to go in that direction, right? So the 2 diets that incorporate both of these things are the Mediterranean and the vegetarian diet. And the reason I talk about both of them is that I have plenty of patients that come into my office and go, there's no way I can be a vegetarian. And then some people going, I really want to become a vegetarian. So I talk about both of them because I have both sides coming in, and both are right in their own regards. So both have very good points. So what is a vegetarian diet? So a vegetarian diet is, of course, high in vegetables, fruits, and whole grains. Both are low in fat and low in calories, right? So when we're thinking about these things, right, fruits and vegetables and whole grains, I'm not talking about going and saying we have a vegetarian diet, but we're going to have a bag of Doritos. We're not talking about that. We're saying whole foods, avocados, nice healthy fats, right? We're talking about grains, not grains like we're gonna go get the white bread or the white Wonder Bread or anything like that, or the hard Kaiser rolls, or we're not talking about those things. We're talking about getting things such as farro and quinoa and beans and, adding lentils and all of these great and wonderful high fiber foods into our diet. So less fat, higher fiber equals smoothing out our estrogen levels, right? Minimizing hot flashes and night sweats. So that's kind of like how we want to see this. Now, does it mean that you have to follow a vegetarian diet? No, because if you want to incorporate some protein, this is very close to Mediterranean. We're going to talk about that. So this is a quick pyramid. This is a vegan plant. It's kind of just a plant-based diet. This is going to be in a handout that will also be available for everybody. And it also, in the handout, will talk about a vegetarian lifestyle as well. So that's all in there for you, for your information, okay? The next diet we're going to talk about. This is the diet we all like, right? Because right here, I hope you can all see the pointer, right? Because we want to be able to have that every once in a while sometimes. So we're going to talk about that, a little bit of a joke. But why I really like this pyramid so much, because if you look at the bottom, it's not food it's talking about. It's incorporating that 4-pillar model, right? So it's talking about the basis should be physical activity, right? We want to be physically active, and enjoying meals with others, to me, talks about our mindset and our positivity, right? We want to be positive and we want to think positive. So it kind of incorporates a lot of those pillars for us. Now, with the Mediterranean diet, look what it's high in: fruits, vegetables, whole grains, right? All whole grains it's talking about. Brown rice, quinoa, farro, it's talking about millet, all these nice whole grains. Olive oils, beans, nuts, and legumes, and seeds, and herbs and spices, all of these nice, good things for us. It's talking about consuming, yes, definitely fish and seafood. Then we have poultry, eggs, and cheese, and yogurt up here, a little bit higher on the pyramid, right? And then very small on top, not that we can never have them, because I never say deprivation. I always say everything in moderation. You have your meats, which would be like your red meat, and your sweets. Now over here, we have drink plenty of water across the board, no matter what age you are. A lot of people walk around dehydrated. Drink plenty of water, 8-ounce glasses a day at a minimum. And then here it has wine. So I want to talk about this for a second, because wine will show up on a list a couple of slides down that says it is a no-no. But it is okay in moderation. I say moderation, a 4-ounce glass of wine, right? So 4 ounces. Now we're going to think of our typical wine glasses, usually probably more than 4 ounces. But put it in a caloric perspective. 4-ounce glass of wine contains anywhere between 130 to 150 calories. Now, if your glass is normally more than 4 ounces, you potentially could be having almost 300 calories just in that one glass of wine. So if we're looking to decrease calories and decrease weight, this may be something where we definitely want to have it in moderation, because it's going to help with that as well, okay? Okay, so what foods are we looking to incorporate? Well, we just talked about a bunch between the vegetarian diet and the Mediterranean diet. But again, we also want to make sure whole grains, we're going to stress that again, dairy products, legumes, increase in lean proteins, increase in fiber, and of course, increase in water. Now here we're going to talk about the big no-nos, right? So caffeine, saturated fats, I mean, look, we have French fries over here, like big saturated fat items, fried foods, highly refined carbs. So people think of, sometimes you think highly refined carb is like a piece of cake. No, that's your white bread. That's your pasta too. Like, those are highly refined carbs. Refined sugars, of course, right? You're thinking cakes, you're thinking cupcakes, we're thinking the candies that are there. All of those things we want to start avoiding. Alcohol, remember we said, we gave it the okay in moderation star on the side. And processed foods, definitely. And if we're thinking processed foods, we're not just thinking fast food, because fast food is actually listed separately. Processed food, I am thinking of going down to that frozen food aisle and grabbing those frozen dinner entrees, or maybe those vegetables we think are good, but they have this heavy salted sauce on it that's high in fat too. So you really want to start to peruse your grocery store and make sure, flipping the labels over, to make sure that what you're buying is a real good whole food. And I think we probably should do a whole nother lecture on that, of how to read labels appropriately. What else? And then fast foods. We're going to talk about having too much fast foods in the diet. Is think about going to Wendy's or McDonald's on a weekly basis. Should we be doing this? Absolutely not. We are looking to get rid of calories and to get rid of this highly processed food items. And I can tell you, all those fast foods are definitely highly processed. So this is a quick slide too of nutrients, because I know a lot of people talk about taking vitamins and supplements during perimenopause and menopausal stages of life. The one thing I want to say is please consult with your physician first before doing that. And I also always recommend getting your vitamins and minerals through food. whenever possible. So along with that diet list that will be available to everybody, there's also a list for omega-3s, calcium, vitamin D, iron-rich foods, as well as vitamin E that is going to be provided for you, that will have a list of where it is found in all the different foods out there for you. So I think this will be a good tidbit of information to pick up after tonight's lecture. So now we talked about how nutrition can impact us, how we need 200 less calories every day at a minimum, right? Depending upon what we're intaking on a day-to-day basis. Now, the next pillar we want to start to incorporate is physical activity. So important. We just said that, you know, studies are showing that as we get older, we tend to exercise less, we tend to move less. Well, I'm going to kind of bring it not only to as we get older, but think about our society today. I mean, tonight we're here on a Zoom call. I can tell you I'm moving less just tonight, because if I gave a lecture in the past, I'd be out, I'd be somewhere. I would be up and moving for the whole hour, talking and chatting with everybody. And instead I'm very sedentary, sitting down right here and talking to you. And all of you too, if we were to go out to the lecture, you would have gone out to your car, walked up the stairs, walked down the stairs, you know, and gotten to the lecture. We are more sedentary now, probably in our virtual world, than we are in the past. So think about that we really need to make sure we're exercising on a daily basis right now, because it's really going to help us to reach our weight loss goals, but also it helps with mental clarity as well. So one of the pillars of health, physical activity, so important. And a low physical activity can lead to increased risk of osteoporotic bone fractures as well. So for physical activity, both the CDC and the WHO recommend at least 150 to 300 minutes of moderate exercise intensity, or 75 to 150 minutes of vigorous activity per week. So you're looking at those numbers and going, whoa, that's a lot. Average about 30 minutes per day. So we put it into perspective, 30 minutes per day sounds a little bit better than 300. This could be you doing a nice vigorous walk. It could be yoga. It could be incorporating strength training. It could be jogging if you like jogging. It could be Zumba class. It could be a dance class you're doing. There are so many different ways to do it. It could be you popping open your computer and maybe doing a YouTube video that's a nice fast-paced walking video or Zumba video. There are so many different ways to do it. So please, 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 physical activity is so important to start moving. Okay, so to try to conclude this nutrition part a little bit, I know we talked about a lot of different things in the nutrition part, but we're going to bring it back to the 4 pillars, right? So the 4 pillars of wellness, we want to make sure that we're touching on each of them, right? So we want to make sure our nutrition is up to snuff in order to prevent this weight gain or help us to lose weight. We want to make sure we're having our exercise. We want to make sure we have a positive mindset, and also that we're getting enough sleep at night, okay? And that's all I have for everybody. I hope everybody enjoyed the lecture from myself and Dr. Kasello, and we'll open it up to questions. Remember, in the chat box, so you can just type them in, and then we'll kind of go off of whoever's question it is, Dr. Kasello and myself.
So, okay. Can you still hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay.
So do you want, I'm going to first answer the first question from Daily, we're dairy intolerant and tried alternatives. Enjoy the taste of soy, but I've been told by a friend that my body doesn't know how to process it and we should not drink it. What's your thought about drinking it post-menopausal? So I could say for dairy alternatives, there are other dairy alternatives besides soy and soy milk. There are also like coconut milk, there's also almond milk, there's also oat milk, rice milk. So there are other different types of dairy alternatives. In regards to the soy and whether you should have it perimenopausal and postmenopausal, I'm actually gonna let Dr. Kasello talk about that.
So what was that about the soy?
Yes, having soy perimenopausal and during menopause.
Soy comes up a lot because, you know, soy is considered a phytoestrogen. So a lot of women are concerned about, is there estrogenic activity? And a lot of times this comes up even with breast cancer patients a lot of time. Should they be avoiding soy? So overall, the data as far as dietary soy is supportive, that it's encouraged to have more soy. And actually, with Japanese women, for instance, they have diets that are extremely high in soy, and they have a much lower incidence of breast cancer. They also have a much lower incidence of hot flashes and menopause. So the dietary soy is really kind of really being more looked at to be more helpful, or even to help prevent, as far as like with breast cancer or whatnot. So encourage dietary soy, but as far as soy supplements go, not necessarily. There's really not enough data out there. So the encouragement really is to get soy through food.
Okay. And the next question, Dr. Kasello, do you want to take that one? Is evening primrose helpful?
So, I get a lot of questions about supplements, and, supplements are things that could be beneficial, but unfortunately, there's not a lot of data, because they're not studied by any pharmaceutical companies. So a lot of the data is kind of sketchy. And so some of the studies are, just kind of weak. They don't have a lot of power. But evening primrose oil is really something that may help to balance estrogen and progesterone. It really is, it's not harmful. I think that sometimes when we're dealing with this estrogen progesterone ratio, where we have this estrogen dominance, that sometimes women will benefit from, some of the symptoms, some of those PMS type symptoms. So oftentimes it will be one of the things for PMS that that'll come up as a recommendation. Again, if it helps you, then it's helpful, but not everybody has the same experience with it.
So true. I don't see any other questions. Anybody else have any other questions they'd like to ask us tonight?
So can I ask you a question, Theresa?
Sure.
One of the things that I talk to patients a lot about is focusing on a low glycemic diet. Mm-hmm. Because that to me kind of focuses on that insulin resistance that I talked about, and I think it's really like a key factor in patients really getting educated into what spikes their insulin and what the impact is. So I talk to people a lot of times about following a low glycemic diet, which the Mediterranean style in and of itself is a low glycemic diet. And then oftentimes you can have certain foods that, we know that what the glycemic index or what the glycemic load is. So I try to teach people about that too. So I don't know if that's something that you also, bring up a lot in your discussion.
I do. It really honestly depends upon where somebody is in their process for weight loss. So sometimes patients come in and it's more of behavior modification, or it's more about, we have to look on a day-to-day basis of what their intake is. But glycemic index, if it's appropriate, definitely we would talk about it. Mm-hmm. And yes, it does tie into that insulin resistance that we're talking about that occurs before the perimenopause stage, even is occurring. So it's definitely something that we could talk about. Mm-hmm. So if you have already gained 25 to 30 pounds of those menopausal pounds, should you reduce the calorie intake even more? Okay. So really, again, not less than 200, and it's going to depend upon how much you're intaking on a day-to-day basis too, and what your needs are. Again, just like how everybody's experience for menopause and perimenopause is different, what you need on a day-to-day basis, depending upon your activity level and what kind of food you're intaking, it would also depend upon what the caloric deficit needs to be.
So I want to also comment on this because, again, it's not just about the calories. Mm-hmm. Just to share my own personal journey, I was, that typical perimenopausal person where, in my 40s, I was putting on those extra pounds. And then somewhere like around 49, I was probably the heaviest that I ever was. I was perimenopausal, and, I was really fed up with it. And it was really like a change of mindset. You know, it incorporated just changing my you know, like that I owned this now. You know what I mean? You had to own it, and I increased my physical activity. I changed my diet drastically, and you have to be kind of honest with yourself sometimes too. With you know, people say to me, "Oh, I eat, and I only eat salads. I barely eat, and I exercise all the time." And you know, so I think sometimes we have to look at you know, be more honest with ourselves, because I think a lot of times we do eat more than we think that you were eating. Um,
Absolutely. And you know what, we can actually add on that one quick note is that if you are unsure about what's going on and maybe how much you're eating, I always tell my patients, go record it in an app. Download an app on your phone. Record absolutely everything you're eating for 2 weeks and see what it is. Sometimes we tend to lose weight during that time because we don't want to put it in the app what we're eating. So it's a good practice to kind of keep yourself in check. If you think that there's a potential that you may be overeating or you're just unsure what's going on, it's a kind of a good step in the right direction.
So I also want to just say I came across an app called My Circadian Clock, and it's basically a research app that's going on, and it has a lot to do with monitoring you know, circadian rhythms, and so this is something that you can download and you can actually enroll yourself in, and they kind of, you know, give nutritional pointers and things to help with just lifestyle in general.
Mm-hmm. So there's another question out here. So any other vegetables besides beans and lentils that we do recommend? So vegetables, I mean, vegetables are everything. So like Swiss charts, broccoli, squashes, like they're all fantastic for you. Carrots, artichokes, like all those vegetables are fantastic for you. The other one is lactate milk anything different than almond milk? Yes, lactate milk is different than almond milk. Lactate milk, you can get it in 1%, 2% whole milk. So the calorie content and fat content would be different. Almond milk it tends to be a lot lower in calories. If you get the unsweetened ones, there's no sugar in it. So just FYI too, because a lot of times the almond milks, they do come sweetened too. So you have to just be careful of that. So when you're buying these items, read the food label, read the ingredients, look at what's in these items before you get them. Dr. Kasello, you want to take the next one?
So is hair loss a symptom of menopause? Yes. One of the things that does happen with dropping estrogen levels is that it does affect the hair follicle, so to release the hair. So it's more like thinning hair as well. So, but hair loss is also associated with cortisol levels too. I mean, when we're overly stressed and we have way too high cortisol levels, that is another thing that also adds to hair loss. As far as biotin, you know, a lot of people take biotin as a supplement. You know, again, you know, with supplements, there's not a lot of research. It's one of the things that are supposed to be supportive, but I really think it's not so much about supplements. It's really getting what you really need through proper nutrition.
I love that. There was another question underneath it, and it said, you know, what or cheese. I think it's relevant to the lactate question, kind of tied into it, or how else to get calcium. So again, remember I told you that we did list that nutrient list and what the foods, how to get those nutrients in, the omega-3s, the calcium, the iron. That list will be provided for everybody. So there are definitely foods besides just the dairy that you can get calcium. So please refer to that list when you get it, everybody. There's also another question, Dr. Kasello, in the Q&A box. I can read it to you. It says, what about meds? I have seen them advertised on TV, both over the counter and from my doctor.
What was it? What about what?
Meds, just medications in general.
Oh, yeah. So I don't know what the specific question is about medications, though. I mean,
just I think in general, if they should take them or not take them. I think that's what it's in the Q&A section. If you want to pop it open, it's the last question.
Let's see. What about meds? I have seen them advertised on TV. So I'm not sure what kind of medication we're really referring to. I mean, there are medications obviously that are associated with weight gain. You know, and I see a lot of people on the SSRIs, which are usually for depression and anxiety. They are associated with weight gain. So not too clear about what they're really asking on that particular question. I want to go over a little bit about, one of the things I also recommend too, because of this erratic kind of perimenopausal estrogen dominance type of thing, is the importance of getting lots of cruciferous vegetables. That's your broccolis, your kales, your cauliflowers. That's, a lot in your Mediterranean diet. They do help us metabolize our estrogens because of some of the chemicals that are in them. And then also fiber. Fiber is huge. I recommend, fresh ground flaxseed meal. Fiber helps to lower our glucose levels. It helps to regulate our insulin. It also helps us to bind that extra estrogen that we have so that it binds it in the gut so that when we're able to eliminate it. So I just want to point those out from a nutritional standpoint.
Perfect. It says, another question, I'm on a dairy and gluten-free diet for the last year, have gained, when before I was 108 to 110, and for the last year have gained about 5 pounds. I'm craving salt and sugar, which I have never had before, and I'm always tired, and I stopped yoga. What to do? So I think we could probably both tackle this one.
Yeah, this gets into the whole concept to me about the gut microbiome and, what we're doing to these intestinal bacteria that we have and their impact. I mean, we're starting to learn more and more about the microbiome and its impact on, our overall health and especially on our mood and our well-being. And, so I always tell patients that, our microbiome is kind of like an organism within ourselves. And these bacteria are kind of like, if we treat them well, it treats us well. But if we treat it poorly, it treats us poorly. So
what you put in is what you get out. So if you put in all sugar and all salt, you're not going to get a positive result out, and you're going to get that feeling of fatigued and tired. On top of it, stopping that exercise, you want to continue that exercise to build up that energy and give you more energy and endurance. Any other questions? I don't see any other questions, Dr. Kasello, at the moment. Do you?
Nope.
Okay. Well, I think I want to thank everybody for coming tonight. Thank you for doing this, Dr. Kasello.
Thank you. I know this is a very unusual kind of thing of like talking into my computer and not seeing any response, but apparently everybody's looking. So
yes, this is good. Apparently people saw us today, so this is fantastic. Thank you, everybody. Again, this is recorded, so it will be sent to everybody. It'll be up on our website, and there'll be some handouts there as well for you. Everybody have a great night. Happy Thanksgiving.
Good night.